Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Matt and Cheryl's Gen Excellent playlist. I'm Matt,
I'm Cheryl.
and we continue our journey through the musical year 1981. Our playlist, which started way back in 1972, now bulging with great songs we've been curating along the way and picking out some of the highlight songs from our musical lifetime, starting with our earliest memories. And now we're into the early part of 1981, so the tail end of the sixth grade year for me. I guess you were in fifth grade.
Yeah, and I can actually remember these years.
That's right. So when we started 1981, we had a couple of specials. We looked at the death of John Lennon and the aftermath of that. We took a look at the emergence of hip hop music. The songs that we chose are songs that you wouldn't have really heard in a live context in 1981 for the most part. Maybe the Blondie song Rapture. I'm sure they were touring around Auto American. But we're going to look at a few bands today that have some common threads between them. First of all, three groups that emerged through relentless touring. It took a while for them to gain a commercial foothold. And bands, groups, for the most part, that are from the northern part of the continent, although one group is from England, but from northern England, and toured heavily in the United States and built up a following in the Midwest. Before we talk about the specific songs, Cheryl and I have both been going over albums from 1981. Just want to talk a little bit about what we've listened to so far. Now, going into 1980, I was pretty certain I knew what my favorite album was going to be, and that did not change. 1981, I literally had no idea going in, so it was going to be a fun process of discovery and rediscovery to choose my favorite record of the year. So, kind of going through chronologically through the year and listening to some of the stuff that I have. But
You've thrown a couple out there, and I'm like, really?
Well, it started, okay, so last weekend we were at the beach and I brought along the Rick James twofer, Street Songs Throwing Down. Street Songs is 1981 album, Throwing Down the follow-up, so two albums on one CD. I really like the Street Sounds album, which was his biggest record, the one that had Super Freak on it. Of course, for those of us who weren't following pop music when that was a hit in 81, certainly will remember its use in the MC Hammer hit You Can't Touch This in 1980. But I like Rick's groove overall. Very influential on Prince about this time. In fact, he's dead now, of course, but had accused Prince of ripping him off. Maybe he's got a little claim to that, I suppose. Prince, obviously, way more talented overall, though Rick certainly had some strong points in his music. You're not as big a fan. I mean, knowing what we know about Rick James as a person, and his music's pretty honest. So, I mean, he's basically talking about his lifestyle, which is doing drugs and having a lot of sex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not talking about kidnapping women yet, but that would come later, I guess. But I'll give the guy credit for being honest. And I love the fact that he reps his hometown, too, Buffalo, on a couple of tracks. So I think my favorite track on the album is probably the last one, which is, most people know it as Pass the Joint.
Yeah, yeah.
It's Pass the J in parentheses. I can't remember the actual title of the song. It's a killer groove, one of many on that record. So briefly, that was up there for me. Again, just in the early stages of listening to albums that came out in 1981.
I never listened to that album. I knew Super Freak, of course. And I agree. The music is really cool. There's some really great stuff on there, but it's hard for me to get past what he's singing about. And yes, he's being honest, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I want to hear about it, you know?
So that didn't remain in the top spot for long. Right now, the one that's in the top spot for me is an artist that I just fell in love with early in college. Haven't listened to him a lot for a long time, but still it's kind of fun going back and listening now. His previous band, Soft Boys, had my second favorite of 1980. We picked a Soft Boys song for our playlist, Queen of Eyes. But Robin Hitchcock put out his first solo album in 1981. All the Soft Boys played on at least some of the tracks on the record, along with Vince Eli, the drummer for Psychedelic Furs, and young pre-famed Thomas Dolby played on this album as well.
Yeah, he played on a lot of albums in that time as a session guy.
Yep. Produced by the same guy that produced the great Soft Boys album, Underwater Moonlight, although it sounds a little more low budget than the Soft Boys album. A little sketchier recording. It doesn't quite pack the same wallop as the rockers on that album do. The ones that do pack a wallop are the ones that Kimberly Rue plays on, who's the other guitarist in the Soft Boys, who went on to greater fame in Katrina and the Waves. So the songs he's on, the name of the album is Black Snake Diamond Roll. So the songs that Kimberly Rue plays on, those pack the most rock and roll punch. But, Robin's he's kind of setting the tone for his long and winding solo career, and he's been very prolific, constantly recording and touring from the early days. But I hadn't listened to this album in a long time, and I've forgotten how much I liked it. It's really hard to pick a favorite song on this record. I mean, they're all pretty good.
I like Acid Bird.
I think that's a lot of people's favorite song on the record. I don't know that it's mine, although I do like it a lot. I think I like a couple of the harder rocking songs better. I think the song that he's played the most live over the years may be my least favorite on the record, which is Brenda's Iron Sledge, which is the second track on the album. But he's got some rockers later on the record, Out of the Picture, City of Shame. I like the whole record, but it's going to be hard if that's my album to pick one song off of that. But again, I got a lot more stuff to listen to before I choose my favorite album of the year. So some of the other albums coming out at the beginning of 1981, April Wine, which is a band that most of our peers probably not going to remember. They were a one-hit wonder in the States. Big band in Canada. They're the Canadian group. They're way more well-known up there, and they got lots of different songs you'll hear on FM radio up there. But they had their one hit in 81 in the States off the Nature of the Beast album, which is an early power ballad called Just Between You and Me. Love it. Loved it at the time. Still do. And that's right there bubbling under on my list of songs for the year.
I don't know if I remember that song, but I feel like they seem to me to be more of a 70s band. So maybe I was thinking that song was from the 70s, which is kind of also a common thread that's going through some of the songs we're choosing today, where you're getting into this era where these bands that were popular in the 70s are still kind of carrying over that 70s sound into the early 80s, and they seem like one of those bands to me.
Well, a week later, the band Styx puts out their Paradise Theater album. This would go on to be their biggest selling record, their most popular one. They'd been on a roll, really starting, I think, with the A Grand Illusion album, going on to Cornerstone, and then Paradise Theater. Styx, one of those bands where as a young kid, you just remember seeing them lumped in with like Foreigner and Eagles and Boston, the bands that all rock critics couldn't stand back in that era, and all got lumped together as corporate rock, corporate AOR. Styx had been recording since 72. They've been, actually the seeds of the group go back in the early 60s, but they had their breakout hit with a song called Lady, which, makes an argument to be one of the first power ballads, honestly. I mean, it hit in 75, hit the charts. It was actually released 2 years prior. So they'd been on an independent label, Wooden Nickel, distributed by RCA, and then they switched to A&M Records. Well, right around the time of that switch, Lady starts getting played on radio and takes off and becomes a hit 2 years after the fact. That would have been the first Styx song I ever heard.
One of the several songs called Lady that were hits.
Oh, right. Well, I've already put one on the playlist.
You've already put one on the playlist, and then there was Kenny Rogers, too.
If this song had come along a few years later, it might have made the playlist, but our remit was so tight there for 1975, just not room for it.
Yeah.
But so our son is introducing my wife, Julie, and I to Arrested Development, a show neither of us watched when it was on.
I love that show so much. Always have.
Yeah, it's good. And then we're introducing him to Freaks and Geeks, which is a show that pretty much nobody watched when it was on back in 1999. Is now this amazing. It's kind of like the Dazed and Confused of television.
Yeah.
Where you've got a period comedy with some effective drama in it as well. You've got a cast of unknowns, many of whom would later go on to great acclaim and stardom. And it's a show that almost nobody watched first time around. One of the great things, there's so much that I love about this show, and it honestly could be my favorite television show of all time. I'm serious about that. I love it so much. The music, they must have shelled out some dough for music rights because they use a lot of the period music of the time, but not just music from 80, 81, which is when the story is set, but older, like classic rocks, like the Who, like older Van Halen songs.
Halen, yeah.
Yeah, and every episode is just full of this great music that must have cost them an arm and a leg. Frankly, I'm surprised we could even go back and watch these shows with the music still attached to them. That's been
you'd think
problem.
That they would be taken down.
Yeah. There's just this great scene where the Nick Andropoulos character, played by Jason Segel, is professing his love to Linda Cardellini's character, who's kind of the centerpiece of the show. It's her straddling the line between being this A student, straight-laced good kid, and hanging out with these delinquents,
burnouts,
the freaks, burnouts. But it's a lot of Styx is cheesy. There's a cheese factor in a lot of their music, but it doesn't mean it's not enjoyable. And this song, guilty pleasure for sure. But it's just It's hilarious the way they use it in this context. I mean, this guy making a fool of himself, trying to
Yes.
express himself via the lyrics of Dennis DeYoung in this cheesy song.
And I so feel for the girl because I know that feeling. You're like,
So,
oh, dude,
okay.
please,
You
come on.
you've got to give us some details on that now.
Oh, I just mean not like being serenaded necessarily, but just having like a guy that's really into you and you're just like,
laying it out
oh
there.
man, you're a nice guy, but it's just, I'm not really feeling it. And, and she's just kind of like, can we just make out? Like, just, do you really? And he's like, no, I just want to hold you. All guys want to make out, but I just want to hold you. And she's like, oh, all right. And that song plays perfectly into that.
So that, that was most people's introduction to Styx when that song started getting national radio airplay and charted high on the charts. But by then they were 3-4 albums into their career.
Yeah.
And I'll let you pick up the thread here, Cheryl, because you've actually done your homework here. Now, you told me you've listened to every one of their albums?
I went back and listened to all of their albums up to Kilroy. I didn't like listen to every note of every album. I just listened to the songs and kind of, fast forwarded a bit through them. The first album, just titled Styx, is very much just in the vein of a lot of bands at that time, I think. Like Journey is one that came to mind, where, they just sound like just a rock band, very Hammond B, organ heavy. Later they became known as more of a prog band.
Right. And for those unaware, Journey's first few records, Steve Perry wasn't in the group, so it was a different sound.
Yeah. And you kind of get that here because Dennis DeYoung is in the band, who is one of the lead singers, and he has a very distinctive voice that,
yes,
especially with the ballads like Lady and Babe, but he just doesn't seem like he has the confidence yet. He's not like really belting it out. He's singing in a bit of a kind of a lower register, and it's just much more subdued. Later on, he became much more kind of theatrical and really played it, and like almost hammed it up to a point. That's actually kind of some of the things that people tend to either love or hate about Dennis DeYoung. He wasn't doing that on the early albums. So in a sense, it kind of makes them sound really ordinary and just not that interesting.
Lady is anything but ordinary. There's a lot of pomp and circumstance in that song.
And it's funny because as I was going through this little exercise and listening to these older albums, there was never really a time where I thought, oh, I just love Dennis DeYoung's voice so much and he's what makes Styx. I always felt like I was much more in the Tommy Shaw camp, which is the more rockin' and
more meat and potatoes. Yeah.
Yeah. But
good.
I was actually finding myself missing the real dramatic Dennis DeYoung in these first couple albums. So that was kind of interesting. They did have a sort of a hit, I think, on that first album that was just like, didn't get a ton of airplay, but it did get some. And then the second album, called Styx 2, is the one that has the single Lady. And that reached number 6 on the charts. And, now we're starting to get a little bit more of Dennis DeYoung coming into his style and sounding more like what you recognize. But the rest of the album, there's nothing that really stands out that much. It's just still just ordinary, 70s rock. It's getting a little bit more on the prog because they are adding more keyboards, but it still doesn't have what I would consider prog sound to it. Equinox, now you've got a couple more Dennis DeYoung songs that were in the top 40, Lorelei and Sweet Madam Blue.
That was the top 40? I thought that was just like a album rock epic.
Oh, actually, no, you're right. Lorelei was the top 40, but Sweet Madam Blue was not. But that is an album. That is a song that you will hear on classic rock radio.
Yeah, KISW was still playing that regularly well into the 80s.
Yeah. So that was a popular Dennis DeYoung song. So you've got a couple more from that album. Then, actually, their next album, called Serpent is Rising, has no hits on it. For some reason, I'm actually starting to like them more. Like, Dennis DeYoung is sounding more interesting on this album, but no hits on it, which we kind of fall into this category again where you've got a band that, they've had a few hits here and there. Then they have an album with no hits. And you have to wonder if at this point they're on what, their 5th album? If the record label is starting to go, okay, but it seems like a lot of bands were given a lot of leeway back then.
Oh,
to
compared to
really just
now?
like,
Yeah.
yes, well, definitely compared to now, but even like compared to the 80s or the
Yeah.
90s, it's like they were allowed to just kind of build and find their sound, maybe get another lead singer in like Journey's case,
And a
maybe.
lot of that came through heavy touring, and which is certainly the case with Styx. They were based in Chicago, but they were working the Midwest really hard before they started branching out to the rest of the United States.
Oh yeah, yeah, they were like constantly touring.
You start playing little clubs, then you're an opening act on arena tours for other big name bands, and kind of getting out in front of people that way. And
Yep.
and fact is, Styx delivered the goods on stage. They were very good live.
Yeah, they were a great live band, and that's probably what kept them going because they did have a fan base due to their constant touring. So now John Kuraleski, the guitarist, is now replaced. He leaves and Tommy Shaw comes in.
So you got the twin lead guitar. We've talked about that in previous bands with Tommy Shaw now replacing him. And then James Young is the other guitarist who's, visually very distinctive in the group. Super tall, long
Yeah,
blonde hair,
long blonde
mustache.
hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's been in the band since the beginning.
Not quite the very beginning, but very early. Yeah, 70, I think, is when he joined up with Dennis DeYoung. From the beginning of them being called Styx, he was there, yes.
Well, that's true. Not the very beginning, because surprisingly, Dennis DeYoung and the two brothers who started the band, the
Twin brothers in the rhythm section, yeah.
They started in the early 60s, and they were like preteen.
Yeah, they were neighborhood friends. They grew up in the same neighborhood in Chicago.
Yeah, so, I mean, Dennis had been part of the band from the get-go. So now at this point, Tommy Shaw comes in, and now we start to get a little bit of that. I mean, James Young always had that sort of harder edge to him and kind of more rock sound, but now he has an ally in Tommy Shaw, because Tommy Shaw is definitely in that vein too. So now Styx kind of gets to the point where they're almost like this dual band.
You got the push and pull.
Yeah. You've got the Tommy Shaw, the James Young camp that is more in the rock vein. And then you have Dennis DeYoung, who's driving Styx more into the theatrical, almost like Broadway. There will eventually be coming up with more like concept albums. They really come across like a Broadway show. His vocals are getting more dramatic as well.
His voice, certainly not to everyone's taste. It's in a higher register. I guess you'd call it keening tenor. But he's an incredible singer. I mean, and if you watch live clips of the band, and there's a whole live show from '81 in Washington D.C. that I watched quite a bit of before we went on here. Mm-hmm. The guy is note perfect on stage. I mean, note perfect.
Yeah.
And he's got this high, strong. I mean, he can really belt,
Yeah,
but it's in a high register, and it's pretty effortless.
It is. And he kind of comes from that camp of John Anderson from Yes and Geddy Lee from Rush. Yeah. And I mean, it's definitely one of those voices that a lot of people love or they don't like, and it's very distinct. But I do think of all those between Dennis and Geddy and John Anderson, Dennis DeYoung has the strongest voice.
Yes.
Like you said, it looks and seems effortless. So I think that he is very talented.
He can hold a note forever. He's got the vibrato control. I mean, he is a very talented singer.
He is. And the vibrato, I mean, that's a polarizing thing too, especially on the ballads. It really stands out. And it's kind of one of those things that it either can be kind of cringe, or it's just like, wow, this guy is an amazing singer. And so that's kind of what was happening within the band too. Now they were becoming more and more popular though with the audiences, and they have bigger hits as they went on, from Crystal Ball starting, and now Tommy Shaw's writing too, and the song Crystal Ball from that album.
Yep, another FM rock staple, really good song by Tommy Shaw.
And also really showcases Tommy Shaw's vocals. He has a great voice. Mm-hmm. He has a great rock voice.
Yes. All three of those guys, James Young, they can all hit the high note.
Which the other thing that means too for this band is the backup vocals are amazing. Yeah. I mean, you basically have lead singers singing backup too. And with different styles, the songs that Tommy Shaw sings lead on, Dennis DeYoung is singing backup on.
Isn't this what separates the cream from the rest of the crop when you're talking about American AOR music? It's the vocals.
It is.
It's the backing vocals. Journey, Foreigner, Boston, all have strong lead voices, but also really good backing vocal harmonies. And, Eagles obviously is the
they're the epitome of that,
paragon.
because basically they're a band of all lead singers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. And Styx is one of those bands that pushes them above and beyond other bands because of the vocals, both lead vocals and backing vocals. And I really like the way that Tommy Shaw and Dennis DeYoung's voices kind of play together because they're so different. But Tommy Shaw sings in a pretty high register too. So they do complement each other, but the styles are just really different. So next album after that is their biggest album. It's their breakthrough album in America.
They move up a tier with
They
the
move
Grand
up a tier
Illusion. Yeah.
with the Grand Illusion, which is so bombastic and just like, welcome to the Grand Illusion.
I like it. I got to admit, I like it.
I do too. But I can see that we're starting to veer toward this, very theatrical, just feels like you're at a Broadway show when Dennis DeYoung is singing, especially. And not only that, but it has one of their biggest hits has probably become like their signature song, really, Come Sail Away.
Yes.
And that's a Dennis DeYoung song.
You were considering putting that on the playlist for 78,
weren't you? Love this song. Yeah. And I think that it's a radio staple that will probably be around forever. And it should be. I mean, it's a great song. And actually, this song, it is a Dennis DeYoung song, but it still feels like it's got more rock power behind it. At the end where it's got that real heavier guitar. And there's another song on this album that I love, Foolin' Yourself, which is a Tommy Shaw song.
Both top 40 hits.
Great song. Love that song so much. They're kind of doing this thing now where, Tommy Shaw has a hit on the album. Dennis DeYoung has a hit on the album. Oftentimes they both have a hit on the same album. Pieces of 8, the two hits from that album are actually both Tommy Shaw songs, Renegade and Blue Collar Man, which are very basic kind of rock songs. Now we get into Cornerstone, their first number one song, actually maybe their only number one hit.
Yes,
their only number one hit, and it's a Dennis DeYoung song, and it's Babe, which probably is the most polarizing song of their catalog. And it's also their only number one hit. So Styx is either now appealing to a different audience who like the ballads. I mean, this is kind of the epitome of cheesy, syrupy, babe, I'm leaving.
Yeah. And a lot of these rock bands are discovering that we could put a couple of these ballad songs on our records and we're going to get a lot more chicks at the shows.
Yep.
It's going to get a much broader base of that audience.
Opening up their audience. Yeah.
Yes. Not that that's a sell for Cheryl necessarily, but
no. It's not what draws me to this band. Actually, what drew me more to this band as I was going along and listening to these albums is when Tommy Shaw came into the band, which seems kind of odd because he doesn't really have a prog element to him, but they started sounding more prog. They were using more synths that were like the Moog and the, synths that kind of I relate to prog band synth sounds, not the Hammond B and the more kind of bluesy stuff. So they were actually veering more toward prog at that point when Tommy Shaw comes into the band, and I definitely prefer those albums.
Come Sail Away, and the spacey keyboards on that remind me a lot of Fly Like an Eagle.
Yeah.
Kind of the same vibe.
But the album tracks, I think, have a lot more of a prog feel to them. And there's even like instrumentals on there that are very prog. But they also are becoming more popular too in rock radio at this time, as they were becoming more prog on their album tracks.
And you're getting this mix of music. You're getting straight ahead rockers that, have some catchy elements to them that'll sound good on the radio, which is a lot of Tommy Shaw's songs. You're getting the Dennis DeYoung ballads, which are becoming hits. And then, usually at least one more epic song that's targeted toward FM radio airplay, not the top 40.
Yeah.
Stuff like Sweet Madam Blue and
Grand Illusion. Yeah. So they kind of had it all in that sense.
Yeah.
But Cornerstone, the album with Babe, the album that, has their first number one hit on it, this is now where the band really starts to splinter because, their biggest song, also their most syrupy ballad, and it is all Dennis DeYoung. Like, it is the Dennis DeYoung show here.
And I think it's important to note, Dennis DeYoung is not your typical rock and roller. He's down to earth, devout, religious, Roman Catholic, married in 1970, still together with his wife, would bring her and the family along on tour.
He's writing
Just
these
this,
songs about his
yeah,
wife. These
right,
songs are about
exactly.
his lady and
So
baby.
very little dangerous about Dennis DeYoung or his, his musical choices.
Right.
Not a lot of edge there.
No, not at all. And James Young and Tommy Shaw, they definitely have the rock edge to them.
Yeah, they're more your typical rockers. Yeah.
And this album started to really put them into separate camps. But, they couldn't deny the fact that they had a number one hit with this syrupy ballad. So their next album, which is actually their most successful album, I think, Paradise Theater, which is this album that has the song I'm choosing for the playlist, Too Much Time on My Hands, a
Second
Tommy
single.
Shaw song. The first single was Best of Times, which was a
Big hit. Yep.
Yeah, hit number 3, and that was a Dennis DeYoung song. So once again, you've got the Dennis DeYoung hit and the Tommy Shaw hit on the same album.
Tonight's the night we'll make history. Honey, you and I.
Every time Dennis DeYoung starts singing, I can only just picture him walking out onto the Broadway stage.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He's commanding this crowd. He has that presence and air about him, which, I mean, he's talented, but then you get the rock and stuff with Tommy Shaw. And it really cracks me up because if you look at Styx's greatest hits, you would swear it's two different bands.
Yeah.
You've got half of them are Dennis DeYoung, half of them are Tommy Shaw, and it's about equal, the amount of hits that each of them had. But they are just so polar opposites that it just feels like two different bands. Anyway, this becomes like their most successful album. Too Much Time on My Hands is actually Tommy Shaw's only top 10 hit. He had top 40 hits with some of his other songs, but this one was top 10. I love this song so much. I love it starts out at the beginning with that like
pulse. It's got that
pulse synthesizer. Yeah. Although it does something weird because after the synth starts, the snare comes in like just snare hits. And he's hitting the snare on the wrong beat. Like he's hitting it on the 3 instead of the 2. So it's got this weird kind of like jarring effect to it. And then after that little intro, then he goes into like the regular drum beat. It's like, okay, that makes sense now. But I don't know why he did that. I mean, obviously it was intentional, but it just seems odd. So then guitars come in and you've got the synths going. And I love Tommy Shaw's voice. And, this is a perfect example of one of those songs where the backup vocals are really great and really adds so much to it because you've got kind of that call and response, the too much time on my hands. Yeah. And you can really hear Dennis DeYoung's voice in that backup.
There's some cool key modulations. I mean, the things stick out for me are the key modulations and that pulse. It's like the ticking of a clock. I mean, that's yes. I think the effect that they're going for, but it creates a really modern rock groove.
Yeah, and that ticking of the clock runs through kind of the whole song, and at the end, it even has it where it all kind of stops, and you just hear this tick, 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 like a clock. I love the little disco beat that comes in. Too much time on my hands. The drummer goes into that disco beat. I just love this song.
I think you and I are both kind of fascinated with the AOR music of this time period. The early '80s, yes. Where the keyboards are becoming more prominent, but they're not dominating the arrangements. They're still in there to add color and different texture to the tracks, but the tracks aren't dominated by these keyboards. It's just one element of the mix.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect balance, really.
Yeah.
And this song is actually less guitar heavy than most of the Tommy Shaw songs, or even any of their stuff. Like it is more reliant on the synth to drive this song. But like you said, it's not like so overpowering. Like it doesn't feel prog. It just feels like modern synths. It's more of a modern 80s synth sound.
Yeah, just a really modern rock sound. And, the sound of rock on the radio was changing. And a lot of the songs you're hearing now prominently are featuring keyboards, sometimes even more so than guitars. And even Van Halen, a couple years down the road would have a big smash that you hardly even notice the guitar until the solo.
Well, yeah, the same thing was happening with Rush around this time, too. They were really going more towards synths. And, to some people, I think they didn't like it because these are bands that had some pretty great guitarists in them.
Yeah, Alex Lifeson, he's all right.
Well, especially right. Alex Lifeson, but even Tommy Shaw and James Young, like these guys are really good guitarists and they're veering away from that. And they really go there in their next album. Kilroy was here, and that's what breaks up the band.
Yeah.
Because now we're going more toward this really modern synth-driven sound, but also bringing in way over the top theatrics. And people probably know the song Mr. Roboto, and you either love it or you hate it because it's a very polarizing song.
Yeah.
And that's really the song that did drive the stake in the band, and cause them to go their separate ways away from Dennis DeYoung, really.
Yeah. They took a little hiatus and then reconvened at the end of the 90s. Unfortunately, the drummer, John Palazzo, was an alcoholic and he drank himself into an early grave, but the rest of the band reconvened. And then Dennis DeYoung, this rift develops. I guess he had some health issues and wanted to delay a tour. They didn't want to delay the tour, so they drafted in a replacement, and then they could never rebuild that bridge. So Styx is still an ongoing concern, but Dennis DeYoung has not been involved with the group for a quarter century.
No, he hasn't. In fact, he sued them at that time, too, for the name. Didn't win, but yeah. So it's a pretty strong divide there. I mean, basically, it's a divorce, and they're not going back. But I was going to say something, though, about Kilroy. When you watch the videos, or even the Mr. Roboto video, because, that was playing on MTV all the time. And that was taken, they basically reenacted that on stage. And there's a live video that came out for that tour where they do there's this actual acting back and forth. There's Dennis DeYoung does monologues. And it's basically if there was going to be a Spinal Tap made for the 80s, that would be what it was based on.
One of the things I appreciate about Styx and Dennis DeYoung is this, they don't take themselves too seriously. I mean, Dennis DeYoung knows that he's a dork, and he had this great quote, because I don't recall this at the time, but there's a track, it was actually released as a single, Paradise Theater, called Snowblind.
Yes, yeah.
Which is Tommy Shaw and James Young co-composers, I think, about cocaine addiction. I think Tommy,
anti-cocaine song.
Well, it is. It's about being addicted to it. I think Tommy probably indulged. I think he's been upfront about that. I'm guessing James Young probably partied too. Pretty sure Dennis DeYoung didn't touch the stuff.
I doubt it. Yeah.
But apparently, this was the era when you had all these ultra religious people concerned about subliminal messages in rock and roll music. And so this was one of those songs that people accused of having hidden lyrics if you played it backwards. I think Satan speaks through us or something like that.
Yes.
And Dennis DeYoung had this great quote. It's like, you know what? We have trouble enough getting our songs right going forwards without it.
Yeah.
It's a great quote.
Do you think that we could actually compose something backwards? It's hard enough just to write a song forwards.
And I think he goes on to say, I mean, this is the group that did Babe. Come on, please. Seriously?
Give me a break.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really funny. So I want to talk about their brethren from Illinois, REO Speedwagon, which came out of Champaign-Urbana. I'm not going to spend too much time on REO because we already did with a previous song. But I warned you I'd be picking another song off the High Infidelity album, and that song is Take It on the Run. But these two bands have kind of been linked over the years because they're Midwest roots, they're Illinois roots, and they've toured together frequently.
I was going to say, I think they even toured together. Yeah.
Right. And another case of this nice guy frontman vocalist, Kevin Cronin of REO, who's got a distinctive voice, not as strong as Dennis DeYoung's, but a very distinctive sounding voice. Again, he's very self-aware about his group standing amongst the rock critics. He says, Styx and REO touring again. We are joined at the unhip, which is classic. That's very funny.
Yes, that's good.
But I tell you what, unhip maybe, but this album just sold bazillions. And throughout, it came out at the end of 1980. This is the High Infidelity album. The lead track was Keep On Loving You, which was a 1980 playlist choice. Another song that kind of fits into the power ballad category, but it's a little rockier, and that's Take It on the Run. The composition of this was Gary Richrath, the guitarist. Richrath, I don't think gets a lot of credit. I mean, he's a hell of a good guitarist. And if you look at live clips of REO from the era, dude goes for it on his solo.
Oh, yeah.
They were on Fridays. They did Don't Let Him Go. Have you seen this live clip from the Friday show?
Yeah.
His solo on that is bonkers. I mean, he is just absolutely cutting loose. No restraint whatsoever. It's pretty fun. And the song goes on and on and on. They jam it out forever at the end. These guys could really deliver live, and they toured heavily throughout the 70s, just slowly gaining a foothold. We've gone through their whole back storyline, but again, Take It on the Run, I think of it lyrically along the lines of Jesse's Girl, which we put on the playlist in our last episode, where just the lyrics they're a little offbeat. They're different, but they scan beautifully. And what a great opener to this song.
Oh my God. Probably the best opener of any song ever. I mean, it's top 5 at least.
Heard it from a friend who, heard it from a friend who, heard it from another, you've been messing around. Bam, bam, bam.
Yes.
There. But when you get to the chorus, again, like a lot of the album, the reverb is just massive on this record. It sounds so huge. And you cannot turn it up loud enough when you listen to this song at home or in the car or wherever. It's
Music
impossible.
Made for arenas.
Oh my God. So I mean, I wore out my 45 of this. I wouldn't even call it a guilty pleasure. It's love. And then another just stratospheric solo from Gary Richrath, way down on the bottom of the guitar neck. Yeah. As the song just keeps building up steam as it goes along and then trails off quietly and beautifully.
Going back to the same as the beginning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So great production on this record. This is a band that, like Styx, had been touring and just slowly gaining a foothold. And then they get a couple of FM songs off. You could tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish, 78. They don't make great strides with their next record. And then this one comes out, and I think they put their nose to the grindstone and had radio very much in mind, and not FM radio, AM radio. And they found the sweet spot. I mean, the whole power ballad concept was still a relatively new thing at this point, going into the beginning of 1981. And these guys absolutely perfected it.
And I think what makes this song so appealing too is it's that combination of starting out kind of like it feels like a power ballad, but then it becomes this bombastic rocker, in the middle, and then kind of goes back down again. So you get both worlds in one song.
Yeah. But again, the lyric is great on this, and it's Gary Richrath's baby. Yeah. But that's just one of many great elements.
But Kevin Cronin sells it.
Oh, sure. He's good. Yeah. Very good singer.
And he's also very expressive. Although it's almost painful to watch him sing live.
Yeah.
Because it's like, this guy's really feeling it,
Yeah, and again, like Styx, these guys best seen in a live context, and that's, really the beginning of their commercial breakthrough is when they released a live album in the 70s. They, got in front of a lot of big audiences opening for other major acts before they finally had their moment in the sun. So that's an album from 1980 that still just dominated the charts, 15 weeks in all at the top of the charts on Billboard. Some of the other records that came out in early 81, the Trust album by Elvis Costello and the Attractions. Now, this is kind of like their last hurrah of their original sound with Nick Lowe as the producer. I've listened to this a couple of times. I haven't listened to it with complete focus start to finish, but I played in the car a couple of times. It's good. It's strong. It's not as immediate as, the best songs on their first 3 albums. So it's a record that probably you need to listen to more. And that's a lot of Elvis's catalog. I mean, this is one of the things that has been challenging and enjoyable in this journey. I'm a fan of Elvis Costello, but I've only listened to a couple of his albums, really more than a time or two. And his work is so dense, so lyrically dense. There's so much clever wordplay going on. You have to listen to a lot of his songs, half dozen, 10 times at least before you really can appreciate everything that he's doing. But this would be the last album with Nick Lowe. He actually released 2 albums in 1981. We'll talk about the other later on, which was somewhat controversial, and then goes for a totally different sound with the Imperial Bedroom album in 1982.
This album used to be my favorite Elvis Costello album.
Might be one of his best sounding albums. It's a really good recording.
Oh, yeah. But after I've listened to all of his albums a lot, but I did end up choosing this year's model for 78 as my album of the year. And I am now seeing that album is just, nothing can touch it. I mean, It's just so great.
I agree. That's his best. And, again,
that
still,
is his best.
Still touring through his catalog. He's got a lot of great records, but it's going to be hard to knock that one off number one.
Yeah.
I think Strict Time, probably my favorite song on Trust.
Love that song.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, in the same week, in early February, Valentine's Day week, 2 major records come out. One we're going to talk about later on in the year, because this would be a big year, 1981, for Genesis and their lead singer, Phil Collins, who releases his first solo album the day before Valentine's Day, Face Value. The day before that, Rush releases what many consider to be their greatest album, which is Moving Pictures, the album that has Tom Sawyer on it.
This is a very, very close second for me for album of the year. The first Rush album that I really got into was 2112. And they're kind of another story where, they started out their first album. Neil Peart wasn't in the band yet, so it was a much more straight ahead rock album. Yep. And they have 2 songs from that first album that are still you hear on the radio sometimes, and it's they'll play them in their live shows.
And actually, the Seattle market is one of the radio markets where they really got a foothold in the United States in the early days.
But then after that album, Neil Peart joins the band, I always want to say Neil Peart because that's really how it's spelled when we look at it, but it's pronounced Peart.
Like the fruit.
Yeah, like the fruit, because it is Pear. They're Canadian, biggest band that Canada has brought the world. But once he joins the band, not only is he, I think, probably the greatest rock drummer who's ever lived, but he's also their lyricist. And he is a very intelligent, well-read guy. And he's bringing in all of these concepts and a lot of science fiction. Well, they were really into Ayn Rand at the time. And bringing those into the lyrics and the concepts in the album. So it's really changing the whole atmosphere of the band. They kind of followed that same course where their first couple albums really didn't do much. Fly By Night, their second album, the song Fly By Night was a radio song, and you still hear that song. Then their third album, Caress of Steel, is one of those albums that like the band loves and thinks is amazing, and then it gets out into the world and everybody else is kind of like, I don't really, not so much. And they're like, oh.
I don't think the album cover help matters. It's just, it looks like it's going to be a dark, dreary listen when you pull out the album.
It does, and it is. It's a pretty dark album. Now they're in that position where the record label is saying to them, okay, guys, this is it. You need to start putting out singles. Like we want to hear actual songs that we can play on the radio.
And Fly By Night should have been one, right? I mean, that should have been a hit. Why was that not a hit single?
It's a radio song. You hear it on classic rock radio, but it wasn't a hit. So once they get to 2112, they're like, okay, well, we understand what you're telling us, what we should do. But actually, this is probably our last hurrah. So we're just going to go all in and we're just going to do what we want, which is the complete polar opposite.
Like wear kimonos on stage.
They make it a full concept album. The first side is all one long extended song that tells a complete story, science fiction story. But it becomes a huge hit. And still one of my favorite Rush albums to this day. Passage to Bangkok is like, on the second side, they have like actual shorter songs, is a song that was played on the radio. I don't know if it was a hit for them, but it was on the radio. But, they sold a lot of this album. So now all of a sudden they're like, okay, we see that we can do what we want, who we truly are, and we will find a fan base. Doesn't mean that the critics are going to like us. Doesn't mean that we're going to be one of the bands that are inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when we should be, But they do continue to build a rabid fan base. And a lot of that, just like a lot of these other bands too, is based on touring, because they're just touring like mad, and they are and still continue to be up until Neil Peart passed away like 3 or 4 years ago now, which is so sad and tragic. One of the best live bands ever. They are superhuman. I truly believe that they are rock and roll superheroes because they're a 3-piece. There's only incredible. 3 guys making all these sounds, and they are incredible. Geddy Lee is the best bass player. Now, his voice is polarizing.
Yeah.
He, once again,
much like Dennis DeYoung. Yeah.
Much like Dennis DeYoung. Very high range, definitely shrill at times.
The cliche is the banshee wail when referring to Geddy Lee's voice.
But I think by the time they hit Moving Pictures, well, I was going to say, Geddy Lee, best bass player. I love his voice. Alex Lifeson, definitely one of the best guitarists technically, but also just creatively, like comes up with just some really cool, interesting stuff. Neil Peart, the best rock drummer ever. I mean, just superhuman. And they also incorporate the synths that Geddy Lee plays, and he has bass pedals that he's playing with his feet while he's playing the synthesizers with his hands and singing. I mean, they're unbelievable. They really are. So they have a couple more albums after 2112 where they're longer tracks and kind of, more concept type albums. And then Permanent Waves comes out in 1980, which I almost chose a song from that album, Spirit of Radio, one of their great singles that is, still a classic rock radio staple. Then Moving Pictures comes out in 1981. Now they're starting to, I mean, Permanent Waves was like this too. Shorter songs and less concept based and more, they still do, Neil Peart still writes, a lot of his songs are like little mini stories, the short stories.
And actually one of their last epic tracks was on this album, right? Wasn't it the last 10-minute plus track that they would record? At least for a long time. I don't know if they have since.
Yeah, actually, I guess it probably was. Yeah, because after that, they're going into really more shorter, not concept albums or songs. Tom Sawyer is just mammoth. I mean, it's their most well-known song. It's their
masterclass in rock dynamics.
Yes. Every song in this album is incredible. I think that, there's one song I don't love, which is Witch Hunt, but the rest of it is amazing. Limelight is another really big hit from this album. Yes. Limelight's really a very autobiographical story about Neil Peart. He's an introverted guy. It was hard for him once they started to become as huge as they were after 2112 that, he had a really rough time transitioning to being in the limelight. And he said that he's had other musicians or just people that are in show business say that song really spoke to them. It's not something you always think about when you see these people up on stage playing this part and being this, like superhero, basically, to a lot of people, when that's not necessarily their personality. It's not comfortable for a lot of people that are in that position.
Yeah, I think Geddy and Alex were more gregarious types and more comfortable interacting with fans, where Neil wanted nothing to do with that.
Yeah, very much so. And Alex, oh my gosh, Alex Lifeson is like the funniest guy
hilarious.
Ever. He is hilarious. And Geddy is really funny too and great. They just have such great personalities. They've known each other since they were teenagers. They're so close, such a tight-knit group of guys. They've never brought in any other instrumentalists or band members or even touring, and that's really unusual. As they've gotten older too, they never brought in anyone else on stage except those three guys making all that music. And I can't think of any other band except maybe U2 that's done that, where they just don't have anyone else adding to their sound at all.
And the addition of the electronic keyboards, they used them masterfully in a hard rock context. Tom Sawyer, one of the prime examples of that. And that's primarily Geddy Lee, who's dealing with this. And obviously, to play bass at the level that he does and be controlling all of these other synths with like his feet and hands while performing live and doing very close approximations to the sound of these songs on the records. This isn't a band that went out and did a lot of improving on stage. They were faithfully recreating these incredibly tricky, complicated songs on stage with just the three of them.
And they had to do that because fans of this band know every note of every song.
Well, the guitar solo on Tom Sawyer is one of the most iconic in rock and roll history.
It is.
For good reason, yeah.
And even like Spirit of Radio, Neil Peart is playing the little like chimes, the do-do-do-do. He's playing that live on his kit. The Who were bringing in, these cool synth parts and stuff, but playing it, to a backing track. They never did that live. Like this was all, every note was played live and every note had to be played perfectly because that's what all the fans were expecting. And they are truly a band for the fans. They are going to create this experience for these people this one night that they get a chance to see them live, and it's going to be the best night of their lives. And it is every time. And they did that all the way up until the very end. And they're just incredible. I love them so much.
So I like a lot of Rush songs. I don't love a lot of Rush albums. They're kind of hit and miss for me for the most part. I definitely like this era of the band the best, starting with Permanent Waves, going through Moving Pictures, and then on to Signals, which is my favorite Rush album. That's the one album that I do like start to finish.
And that had their biggest hit on it, New World Man, which was a
and
top 10
I
single.
don't really recall hearing that a lot on the radio. Tom Sawyer, I do recall hearing, but not that so much.
Subdivisions was also a hit for them on that album.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk more about Signals when we get into 1982. But for me, Moving Pictures, Tom Sawyer, unassailable classic rock song. YYZ or YYZ, as they would call it, being Canadians, one of their great, intricate, proggy, naughty instrumentals, right up there with La Via Strangiato from Hemispheres. If you want to see Rush showing off their fearsome chops on display, it's those two instrumentals. Yeah. And then I like the Camera Eye. I do enjoy that. I think the album Side 2 tails off after that. And then Red Barchetta, that's one of those where it seemed a lot cooler when you're a teenager. Now it just seems a little, I don't know, corny
cheesy
to me, but
corny. Well, Red Barchetta is about driving, and Neil Peart, he had a few real tragic things happen in his life. His daughter was killed in a car accident, and then his longtime partner died of cancer like the following year. And he basically said, I'm out. And he eventually got back in with the band after a couple years off, and they started touring again. But what he started doing between shows, he would ride his motorcycle because he was always really into cars and driving, and not like racing, but like long distance, on
that I can appreciate
roads. And yeah, so that's what Red Barchetta is about. But later it became something that was very cathartic for him. He actually was able to spend that time, because he is very introverted too, just with him in the road. And he's written like 3 books based on those experiences in the years that he toured that way, riding his motorcycle. If you're a fan at all, I totally recommend finding Neil Peart's books. He's such an incredible writer. It just really gives you a glimpse into him as a person, and it just makes me love him even more. He's already a superhuman musician to me, but I think he's just an amazing person too.
And the film documentaries have helped the band out too. I mean, it's highly advised if you're interested in Rush at all to watch these, because you really get to know them as personalities, and just the humor that those 3 shared. They're very likable characters, and then there's lots of great footage as well. Lots of great early footage on these.
Well, yeah, the documentaries are great. There's also a video, it's on YouTube, called Rush and REO. And they went to Brazil and played 3 shows there. They had no idea. That they had a rabid fan base there. And they land and they're like, are the Beatles here? Like, what's going on? There's so many people here to see us. They had no clue. One disc on the DVD is the concert, and then the other disc is a documentary about them there, and like how it was just so shocking to them. They had no idea. But watching the videos, the concert video of that audience literally does know every single note to every song. They're singing every word. They're clapping to every note. I mean, it's like a football game, when it's like all the chanting and all the, meaning soccer, a Brazilian football game. Mm-hmm. And that's how they approach the band. And it is just incredible. And it really does give you this sense of these guys are so above and beyond just a rock band.
So common theme in these groups that we've talked about: Styx, REO, Speedwagon, Rush. And then while we got a little more time, I want to get our other song on the playlist here, which is Climax Blues Band. And they had a song that just fell short of the top 10 in the United States in 1981 called I Love You. Now, we're not going to spend a lot of time because we already have. We've already picked one of their songs, and we mentioned at the time, Climax Blues Band, one of the greatest 2-hit wonders of them all. They had 2 big hit songs in the United States, both of which we're putting on the playlist. 2 very different sounding records. The first one was Couldn't Get It Right from 1977, a funky rocker with Colin Cooper on the lead vocals. This is a straight love ballad with the bass player Derek Holt on lead vocals. If you see online clips, you'll see him at a keyboard. On the record, the keyboard, the electric piano, the beautiful electric piano, this is played by Nicky Hopkins, which was, he was one of the great session musicians of the 60s and 70s, kind of the go-to guy in England, at least. I think he played on a lot of Who records. He played on a lot of Rolling Stones records. I want to say he played on at least 1 or 2 Beatles solo albums too.
Yeah, he did. George Harrison. And he plays the piano on Song Is Over and Getting in Tune from Who's Next, which are just beautiful piano-based songs.
Yeah, so you get his vibe on there with the electric piano. Derek Holt, in the early days of the band, he was a guitar player. He switched over to bass with some of the changes in the lineup. And then the core era of Climax Blues Band, they were originally called Climax Chicago Blues Band, is when they brought in the drummer John Cuffley, and he and Holt, great rhythm section. So that's from the mid-'70s on into the '80s. It's a four-piece. So Holt, he's written this song about his first wife, and it's a straight love song, beautifully sung, very McCartney-esque sounding ballad. And it's kind of left field hit for them. It's off their 1980 album, Flying the Flag. And if you listen to the album it's on, they've already started bringing in elements of funk and R&B into their blues-oriented hard rock sound from the early days and get a little more funky rhythm behind them. And they're getting a little slicker as we get to the end of the decade. The Colin Cooper single, which is the lead track of the album, very slick, pop-oriented song, which makes it all the more frustrating that this song, I Love You, would become so divisive within the group that they would basically splinter in the following years. And within a couple of years, Colin Cooper would be the lone returning original member. The rest of the band,
their babe.
Exactly. The rest of the band absolutely hated this song. Very catchy, very beautifully sung, and, heartwarming lyric. It's just a straight love song about his wife and how she came along and rescued him from a tough period
from
in his
growing
life.
his hair long and drinking a lot of beer.
hitting the beer. Hitting the beer. He was hitting the beer.
Oh, I don't know. This guy needs help.
Ooh, babe, you got what it takes, so I made you my wife.
Yep, so I made you my wife.
It's not going to win any awards for lyrics, but it's sincere. It's touching.
Yeah.
It hits me right here. I'm not afraid to admit it. I love the melody. It's beautifully sung. Mm-hmm. This is one where I would have been close to probably buying the 45 at the time. I certainly loved it when it was being played on the radio. But if
it's definitely a single, like a 45. You buy the 45, not the album.
So if you go to find this record on a compilation, good luck. It's not even on a lot of Climax Blues Band greatest hits album. They hated it so much, they refused to play it live. And this is a band that had really toured heavy in the United States, started to build up a following, had a top 10 hit with Couldn't Get It Right. And they've become a solid live draw. They're more well-known in the United States than England at this point. I Love You was not a hit in England. It was not a top 40 in the UK. But these guys said, no, we are not playing this song live. It's like a bridge too far. Which, again, if you listen to the rest of the album, it's not a great leap.
It's not a leap, no.
Yeah. And it's an undeniably great song.
Yeah. I mean, it peaked at number 12 on the charts, but it also reached number 20 on the adult contemporary chart.
And it's very much soft rock, no question.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what drew the line there, I guess, is that, we are not an adult contemporary band. Although the album does sound like it could be.
Most people are unfamiliar with this group, and they delivered the goods. I mean, they had an outstanding lead player in Pete Haycock, very good slide guitar. I mean, he's got blues chops out the wazoo.
And the guitar solo in this song sounds like it could be Badfinger.
Or George Harrison.
Yeah,
exactly. That's one of the great elements is that slide guitar in the instrumental breaks. Yeah, it's just a simple part, but it works
so
very
pretty.
well.
Yeah, it does sound like George Harrison. And I feel like if this were a Badfinger song, people wouldn't really think it was that cheesy. They'd be like, oh yeah, this totally fits in with Badfinger.
Could have easily been on Straight Up or one of the great Badfinger albums from the early part of the 70s. So you mentioned this when you first started listening to the song. I said, this does not sound like a 1981 song at all. And it doesn't.
No, it does not. I always think of it as a 70s song.
This song's an absolute classic.
It is. I feel like this is a song that most people would know if once they heard it, they'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that song. And because it was a pretty big radio hit.
Yeah.
But, it's not like it had a music video, because a lot of songs in this era, even though MTV hasn't quite come around yet, people are making music videos for most songs that are singles or hit singles. And this one doesn't have one. They were on Top of the Pops. There is a performance you can see online of them doing this on Top of the Pops, but they never made a music video for it because I guess the band just dissolved after this. I mean, well, no, they had an album that came out in 1981.
They still tour. There's no original members left in the group, but they're still a touring entity. Colin Cooper is dead. Pete Haycock is dead. Derek Holt is still kicking around. But I don't think he's touring under the Climax Blues Band flag. But again, they've just been a constant over the years cranking out their familiar hits, with the exception of one, which is one of their great songs, which is just sad to me.
Well, Pete Haycock and Derek Holt actually formed a band called H Factor in 1989. They had an album and they re-recorded I Love You for that album. And I listened to it and I was like, oh, I don't like it, because one of the things that I love so much about this song is the backup vocals. Once again, the backing vocals are great, and they don't have them at all in that version.
Three good vocalists in the group. Colin Cooper, who played the saxophone, he's got that deep, raspy.
He's the one that sings the lead on Couldn't Get It Right.
Yeah. And he's got that throwback look with the long hair and the mirrored shades. Looks like a biker. And then Derek Holt, when he's not singing the lead, is singing these stratospherically high harmonies on a lot of their songs. And then Pete Haycock sings lead vocals on the song that he writes, but they're all good vocalists.
Yeah, I think the backing vocals on this song are great, and it kind of lifts it up, really elevates the song. They don't do that on that H Factor version. I'm like, well, what's the point? It really takes away from it. So I think that they are another good example of having multiple singers in a band, and singers that can really reach those high notes too, especially in the backing vocals, just makes such a big difference.
So I Love You by Climax Blues Band. We get both hits from the great two-hit wonder from Stafford in England. All the original band members from the same city in the Midlands in England. Also this week, we add Too Much Time on My Hands, the second single from Styx's most popular record, Paradise Theater, which came out right at the beginning of 1981. And not only Climax Blues Band, but REO Speedwagon gets a second song on the playlist. Two songs off the same record, no less. So we've got, two albums that have two songs on the playlist now?
Yeah, we do.
Double Fantasy, which came out at the end of 1980, and High Infidelity, which came out at the end of 1980, straddling the years 1980 and 81. I don't know that we'll have multiple songs off the same album going forward or not. We will have to find out. So far for 1981 on our playlist, we've got, I put on Stars on 45, Blondie's Rapture, Steve Winwood's While You See a Chance, Climax Blues Band, I Love You, and REO Speedwagon's Take It on the Run. Cheryl's had The Who, You Better You Bet, Rick Springfield's Jesse's Girl, John Lennon's Watching the Wheels, and Styx, Too Much Time on My Hands. I'm not sure where we're going next. We're going to be getting into the spring of 1981. I know Cheryl had considered a Neil Diamond song for the playlist. I don't know that you have.
I did, because it was so huge for me at the time, but I don't know if I want to waste one of my choices on it. It's still a song I really like, actually, but I don't know. We'll see. It might have to be relegated to the end when we finish 1981 and we just talk about the songs that didn't make the playlist for us.
Still to come, Hall & Oates had a big breakthrough in 1981 with a number one hit toward the end of the year. We already talked about Genesis and their Abacab album. Pretty sure Cheryl's going to pick a song off of that. Queen and David Bowie, Under Pressure. Forgot that's one of your songs as well. And Cheryl and I will both continue to evaluate the albums of 1981. Cheryl's got a pretty good idea what her favorite record's going to be. Jury's still out for me right now. Robin Hitchcock's Black Snake Diamond Roll is number one on that list. But I got a lot more to listen to. We got a lot more to talk about when we next get together. But until then, you've been listening to Matt and Cheryl's Gen Excellent Playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Cheryl.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Take care.